The journey of caring for a loved one who is living with dementia can be quite challenging. The aim of this podcast is to make caregiving less daunting and more fulfilling. On this platform, we share knowledge, understanding, and experiences. We enlighten, give hope, and encourage, and in the process, create positive awareness about different aspects of dementia. Welcome to my podcast, Dementia Caregivers Corner. My name is Juliah Ratladi. Dementia Care, how deep is your love? In today's episode, we have yet another phenomenal woman who is an author, a speaker, and family caregiver to her mother, who was diagnosed with dementia in 2010. Our guest earned her PhD in Educational Policy Studies from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Her education as a policy analyst was an invaluable tool for managing the interpersonal changes to the relationship with her mother. She created her business, Praxis Senior Care-Giving Solutions, to give family caregivers a resource for navigating the demands of caring for a loved one. Her book, OMG, I Am the Grown-Up, a conversation on giving care to a loved one and yourself, is a roadmap for managing the interpersonal ups and downs of caring for a loved one. The foundation of her motto, caregiving is what you do for your loved one. Giving care is what you do for both of you. This motto introduces her praxis for care, a strategy that helps family caregivers balance their needs with those of their loved ones. Using thinking points, self-reflection, and journal exercises, readers build an individualized care journey for providing the best care for both people. Let us welcome in today's episode none other than Dr. Sheri.
Hello, everyone. Hello. It is my pleasure to be here. I'm so excited.
I am excited too. Let's get into it, Dr. Sheri. You know, your mom is living with dementia and you are her care partner. There are so many people who don't know what dementia is. If you were to explain or describe what dementia is so that they can understand, how would you describe dementia?
I think the most important thing about dementia is to be honest about what it is. Dementia illnesses are degenerative brain disorders that impact a person's ability to reason and use good judgment in decision making. And ultimately, because they are degenerative brain disorders, you start to see physical changes. And so sometimes people get diseases that they never had. The person may have never had any heart trouble, but they suddenly get heart disease, or they become diabetic and there's no diabetes in their family. So it's about the fact that dementia illnesses change the brain. So we have to embrace the fact that the person's brain is changing.
Yes, it's clear. And what type of dementia is your mom living with?
We're living with Alzheimer's dementia. So this is one of those dementias that can last a very long time. She was diagnosed in 2010, in the summer of 2010. And so here we are in the winter of 2024. So we're 14 years in. She's 96 years old and she's still hanging in here.
Okay. But okay, let me take you back. Before the diagnosis, how was her personality? What kind of work, if she was a career person, what did she do? And what was your relationship? Not just you, like family and relationship. How was it before the diagnosis?
My mom was a school teacher for 33 years. And she was that social butterfly. She was the person that would talk to anyone if they were standing still too long. Whereas I'm the youngest of three, I got to check you out first before I talk to you. I'm not going to be rude, but I got to check you out a little bit. So our personalities were fundamentally different. And before the diagnosis, like I said, she was that social butterfly. She was always everywhere. And after the diagnosis, she still retains that. And it's interesting to watch her try to engage with the world in a space where her brain is not allowing her to do it very effectively. But she's still here, and she is determined to stay engaged. So
At
that's what we
96.
work with.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
what we work with. One of the things that I learned on this journey with her, and you've probably heard this about keeping the person's brain active and doing things and blah, blah, blah. My tip to people who are living with a person with dementia, give them stimulation that their brain can handle. Because a lot of times we all get frustrated, and we've all had those instances where we know something, but for whatever reason, you're just tired or whatever, you just can't get it. But with an unaffected brain, you can step back, you can take a nap or whatever, and then come back to it. But for people with dementia illnesses, that doesn't happen. And so sometimes they can get really frustrated and act out because I know good and well how to get from my den to my kitchen, and I'm stuck in the hallway and I don't know how to do this. So being patient and understanding that it's their brain changing and guiding them in those moments to help keep that frustration down a little bit, and stimulating them only with what their brains can handle.
You see, I like that you are even emphasizing that, because that is the word that I've picked up, what their brain, the stimulation that their brain can pick up. Because sometimes caregivers overdo things. I was just reminded of the family members of the person that I cared for. I just thought to myself that they were overdoing some stimulation, but couldn't say that much. But I like the fact that you have mentioned that. So should they be listening to this, they would understand that what the brain can afford to do, not overstimulate.
My mom can't do restaurants. There's just too much going on. And I think there's a misunderstanding about dementia illnesses. People think that the people's brains just turn to mush and that it's just this lump in their head. For those of us with unaffected brains, if we're in a restaurant and someone drops some forks, our brain, we hear it, our brain says not necessary, and we can filter that out. But for people with dementia illnesses, as their brains change, they lose that capacity to filter. So everything is pouring in at the same level of importance. The lighting, the sounds, the smells. And when they can't filter it, it just becomes overwhelming. So we don't do restaurants anymore, but she can enjoy eating her lunch on the shoreline with the birds and the butterflies. It's quiet. She can tolerate the sound of the waves and the seabirds. So, okay, can't do restaurants, but we can do shoreline. So, and again, so it's providing that stimulation that she can handle.
Yes, I love that. I'm sure in your company is one of the things that you talk about a lot, or that you offer the people who come for your services, because it is really, really important, that stimulation part. Sometimes when you are caring for your own family, we all want what is best for our loved ones. And we end up overdoing some things, But still going back, I still want to understand your mom. Obviously, there were some things that she did that you thought that maybe she needed to see the doctor, maybe those symptoms that she exhibited. And you, as a family, you were not aware that it could be Alzheimer's. What did she do? Those things.
Well, actually, the doctor's appointment was because of my brother. He was living with her. And remember, I said my mom and I had our own layers. So I was not there on a daily basis, but my brother was. And he called me up and he was just all frustrated. And he's like, you need to take mom to the doctor. She's not acting right. I was like, well, what do you mean that she's not acting right? He's like, I can't describe it. It's weird. So I'm like, okay, calm down. I'll do this. And I went to that appointment, and the doctor had been a family friend that we also knew socially. And he just basically threw it on the table. I'm glad you showed up. Your mom is in the early stages of Alzheimer's dementia, and you need to move in with her.
And tell me, Dr. Sheri, did you know what that meant? Did you know what dementia was? Did you know what Alzheimer's was?
I didn't really know, but all I heard was move in the house with her. And I was like, no, 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 we can't do that. And as I said, we had known each other socially. I'm a Spelman graduate. He's a Morehouse graduate. And so there is that extended familial bond, which is what gave him the comfort to just really be able to not sugarcoat this, put it on the table. And because he knew who I was, it was like, no, you're the one. You need to do this. Now, I had known since I was 24 that of the three siblings, I would probably be the one. But that was something I had tucked away for 25 years and hadn't thought about. And I was not expecting it to just show up, bam, in my face.
Yeah.
So I was pretty lost. I was pretty lost. And part of that was because we didn't get along very well. And the reason we didn't get along wasn't because of anything that we had done directly to each other, but because of spillover from the relationship she had with her mother. My grandmother thought it was appropriate to put verbal footprints all over my mom whenever she felt the need to do so.
Yeah.
And my mom is of that generation where you don't speak back, so she swallowed all of that. But we all know that things don't stay buried. And so that anger and pain and angst had to come up and come out somewhere, and she vented it at me. Well, the problem was we have two very different personalities.
Yeah.
I'm of the generation where you speak back about things you don't like. And so my mom thought that swallowing all of this was a show of respect to my grandmother. And she felt that me speaking back and saying, no, I don't like this, I don't like you treating me this way, was a show that was a sign that I didn't respect her. So that created just this undercurrent of tension at all times for us.
Okay, so now you know that mom is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Then you had to move in to be with her. What other adjustments did you have to make as a family to accommodate your mom's new needs?
Absolutely. Now, I was still working at the time. I was still working outside the home. Mm-hmm. So in moving in with her, it was being aware of what she could and could not do, making sure that she ate before I went to work, making sure that her meals were prepared in a way that she could handle while I was at work. Also making sure that I prepared stuff that I could fix quickly once I did get home. So my whole world changed. And part of our not getting along, we had this thing that I describe as a cycle of anger, where we'd get angry with each other about something, stay angry for a really long time, and then just sort of let it dissipate and not really deal with what was making us so angry. So I'm in a place where I don't want to live. I'm living with something I don't like, which is this cycle of anger. And now I've got all these tasks I have to do to keep her safe. It was just not fun.
I can imagine.
It was hard. And I'm living with an unpredictable disease. And the thing about Alzheimer's dementia is that everybody doesn't get everything. And what people do get manifests at different levels.
Yeah.
And levels of severity. So I don't know what I'm going to get in this.
Oh.
So all of this is swirling around. And I was really having a hard time coping.
And you were still obviously learning the ropes on how to care for her because you didn't have that much information, which I believe we will talk later about how you assist people so that they don't pass through the same stage that you passed through with no information, right?
And that's just it. Becoming a family caregiver, it's like getting a career for which you had not planned. Yes, I had gone to school. I was doing my consulting thing. I knew how to do that. But this new role of family caregiver, nobody goes to school for that. Nobody studies that. There are no certificates for that. So you don't know what this is until you get it.
Yes, it's hard. I was talking to someone from here where she's in the UK and she said she had siblings who stay out of UK, out of the country, and they couldn't understand the progression of their dad. Their dad had Alzheimer's as well. And because they are far away, they could not comprehend what is really, really happening. Even if they wanted the father to go to a nursing home, those who were far away couldn't understand. Until you are in it, that's when you understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So living with a person with Alzheimer's dementia has changed my understanding. So I didn't know what I was going to get, so I just defaulted to what I knew how to do. And my background as an ethnographer helped me observe, okay, what is it she can do? What is it she can't do? And at the time, I went to every forum and workshop, all these things to try to learn. And after about a year, I was almost getting information overload. There was just too much information in there. And most of the information I was getting was about what the losses were going to be.
Oh.
So I was continuously looking for losses. And it just finally hit me. It was like, I can't do it like this. That's too much to manage. So I had to step back and decide, okay, she's going to lose capacities. What can she still do? And once I got into that space of what she can still do, now I can decide what we're going to do.
Okay. I want to bring this one up first before I continue. You are from, is it Black American? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I come from Botswana in Africa. I am here in the UK. I chat with different people from across the world. We're talking about stigma and dementia. In your own way, how did you experience stigma? Or did you experience it at all? And how is it in the community? Do they understand what dementia?
I giggle when you ask about stigma.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of this weird thing that sort of shifts from, oh, you poor little thing, to, oh, you actually talk about that. One of the things that sometimes happens in the African American community, we don't talk about things, and we certainly don't talk about things outside the home. You don't talk about that. And so when you don't talk about it, you can't find the resources, you can't find the strategies, you can't find what you need in order to get through this thing. So I learned that I needed to be very open about the fact that my mom had Alzheimer's dementia. Some people were a little taken aback by that. They thought it would embarrass her. And I'm like, no, I have to talk about this in order to find out what I need in order to keep her safe. If she's wandering outside the house, I need my neighbors to know that she has Alzheimer's dementia and you shouldn't see her without me.
Correct.
So I can't keep that in the house. I can't keep that private. I can't keep it a family matter. Because I need
Can you
support.
shout that out to the Black community, please? You can't keep it in. Otherwise, you're not going to get assistance.
Yeah. And then there were some of her friends who had a hard time understanding what it meant.
Mm-hmm.
And getting them to understand that, even, like I said, my mom was the social butterfly. So she was the one that was always in everything. And you put her in a gathering and she's running around talking to everybody. And so people had come to know her that way. And what was very difficult was getting people to understand that even though she can't communicate with you that way anymore, she still likes having people around. She still likes having people come, and if you do nothing else but sit still and hold hands, she likes that. And there's a poem in my book that I wrote about that, and it's called Look at Who I Am. And it talks about, see me. See me. I may not be able to do it the way I used to, but still see me.
I'm here.
Exactly.
Yes. I'm reading this book. It's a part of my assignment. It's called Somebody I Used to Know by the late Wendy Michelle. And then she said something like, when she was diagnosed, the neighbors were tried to treat back, And while she was in the garden, she saw one of her neighbors passing by. And when the neighbor realized that Wendy is in the garden, he took the other route. And she didn't know how to feel, but she felt sad. She ended up going to that person and asked them, what is it that I did? And they said, because we read in the previous day newspaper that you have been diagnosed with dementia and we don't know how to handle somebody who is living with dementia.
And I think that that's part of the image of dementia, of people living with dementia, that their brains are turning to mush. They won't recognize you. They won't be able to engage. They won't, all these won'ts, what they won't be able to do. And instead of talking to people about, maybe you can't do it the way they used to, but they're still there. And sometimes people have a hard time with that relationship change. If that person was the dominant person in the relationship, and this was the person who always got you out of your shell and got you to move and do things, and now this person can't do that anymore, there's that loss, and you don't know how to deal with the fact that the person I relied on to get me out of my shell can't do that anymore.
So we cannot keep that inside. It has to be talked about. It has to reach everyone who is able to listen, to read, to...
Exactly, because you had a relationship. And the thing about becoming a family caregiver is it fundamentally changes that relationship. You go from two people who were living independently to an independent person who is now dependent upon someone else. And that's a huge shift for both people. And so there are a lot of emotions that come with that. And so for me, that was the part that doesn't get discussed. Now, you can go out and when you talk about dealing with dementia and dealing with people living with dementia, you get laundry lists, this long of tips and things to do.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's really talking about how it feels when you have to do this. And I was saying that the hardest part of being a family caregiver is doing everything you have to do while you're feeling everything that you're feeling.
Yes. I get some chilly goosebumps when you just say that. Can you say it again?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Please.
The hardest part of being a family caregiver is doing everything you have to do while you're feeling everything that you're feeling. And that's the part that doesn't get discussed as much. And that's part of why I wrote the book, because nobody's talking about the emotions and nobody's talking about creating strategies for dealing with these emotions.
I'm getting emotional.
It's okay.
I read some articles that say dementia caregivers experiences more burnout and stress than the caregivers of other illnesses. Maybe do you know why? Or maybe just obviously to add on what you just said. What's your take on that?
Because and when they talk about that, they're missing the nuance of the relationship and the emotions that you have a lifetime of experiences and interactions and all of this. You have a history of that. And so when Alzheimer's dementia or whatever dementia illness arrives, it changes that relationship. And there are a lot of, regardless of what your relationship was before the illness arrived, it's fundamentally changed. And so if you had a great relationship with someone, there's grief over the loss because now this person can't be the way they once were. And you're struggling to build a new relationship out of those ashes. If you didn't have a great relationship, but you thought maybe in time you might be able to build it, but now this disease is here. And so now you can't even do that. You can't fix it. So there's that loss and all of these emotions that just start swirling. And so it's important that you understand yeah, this is highly emotional. You're going to feel this. So don't be afraid of what you're feeling. There are three things that you have to do if you're going to navigate this with a difficult person.
Yes, I
Number
want those.
number one, you have to choose how you're going to live, because this is going to happen. It's happening. And in this family caregiver world, it's so easy to just get snatched downriver by life's inertia that you stop and think about, well, what is it? How do I want to live through this? I didn't get a choice about what I'm experiencing, so I have to choose how I'm going to live the experience.
Yes. Number two, we're talking of three things, because I really want those things. How do you navigate caring for someone that,
Number
that
two,
you
have to make a commitment to yourself. When you choose how to live, you have to make a commitment that you're going to fulfill that. And you have to make that to yourself. And the third thing is get support. You cannot do this by yourself. So going back to what we said, let it out. Talk about it. Get the support that you need in order to be able to fulfill that commitment that you've made to yourself.
Yeah. How easy is it, though, to follow those? How easy or how difficult is it to follow those three strategies that you just mentioned?
It's hard.
Yeah. That's why we need people like you to carry us along the way, right?
Exactly. I learned those things in the middle of our journey through Alzheimer's disease. My mom got breast cancer.
Oh, sorry for that.
So now here I am. I'm having to navigate another unfamiliar disease with a person who's really losing her capacity to process this complex information about treatment. So that became my job.
All right. You're bringing another, bringing in another illness. I want to say this. Okay, then how easy or difficult it is. I realize that sometimes when people who are living with dementia, the health practitioners only focuses on one disease at a time or illness. Maybe they'll focus on the Alzheimer's part and forget about the cancer. Are you finding that you are getting assistance for both, like comorbidities?
Well, I got really, really lucky. So let me go back to where I was. Alzheimer's disease is a disease that it can last many, many years. That journey can last a long time.
Yeah.
But breast cancer, that's something that can quickly shorten somebody's life. So I had to choose whether I was going to continue living life as we had been in this weird conflict thing, or was I going to do something different with the time I had left? And I chose to say, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I never liked it, never thought I could change it. But now I was in a situation where I had to think about what I was going to do with this life. And if she's going to pass away, what do I want to be left carrying? Do I want to be left carrying that conflict that was unresolved? Or do I want to carry the fact that I at least worked hard to try it, regardless of what she did? And so that's how I made that choice. And that's how I would learn you don't get a choice in what you have to live, but you do have a choice in how you live it. And making that commitment to myself to live differently and getting the support that I needed to fulfill that commitment all work together to create a space where I'm happy with what I've done, I'm at peace with what I've done, and I actually like the person that I've become because of this journey.
Wow. Yes, talking about support. Caregivers need support. Dementia caregivers need support. I want to know the inspiration behind your book. Why did you end up writing OMG, I'm Grown Up, a conversation on giving care to a loved one and yourself?
As I was starting my journey, I couldn't find a real good tool to help me navigate this journey. I didn't have one. And it was after the breast cancer, about 3 or 4 months after mom's treatment, and she was doing okay. a friend invited me over to her house for breakfast. And as we were talking, she's said, "Okay, so how you doing? Really? How are you?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I had to make a choice. I had to think some things through that I didn't even know I needed to think through." And she said, "Oh, really? What was that?" I said, "Well, number one, I had to forgive my mom for the things she did to me. And I also had to forgive myself for the things that I did in response." And I said, "And I'm learning to be patient so I can cope with there's a lot of stuff going on. And so I've got to be patient with myself to manage all this stuff, but I also have to be patient with her as her brain is changing and she's not able to do this. And the bottom line is I just have to accept the fact that this is hard. And I'm going to have to make decisions about how to get through this." And she just got this look on her face. And she jumped up from the table and she ran and grabbed pen and paper and said, "Write that down."
Oh,
I said, "What?" "Write it down." She said, "You have this way of saying things that you just think just makes sense, but you don't realize how powerful those sensible thoughts are. Write it down."
that's why I asked you, can you repeat that, what you said? Because yes, I understand the way she was coming from, your friend. Yes.
And so the book started with that conversation, and the Praxis for Care started with the realization that forgiveness moves your past out of the way so that you can cope, you can be patient to cope with what you're experiencing, and you can have acceptance for the difficulty and find your way through it. Because when we think about life, it's a continuum. You've got your past, you've got your present, and as we keep breathing, we're going to get a future. Forgiveness deals with that past, patience deals with your present, and acceptance helps you get ready for your future. And
So
so
this.
I didn't find that kind of a tool as I was
Mhm,
going through this.
mhm.
So I wrote one.
And if you were to summarize that book, how does it assist caregivers? Do you have any strategies that you have laid out to say if they do 1, 2, 3, their lives will be better, their caregiving journey would be improved?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you said a word that I tend to avoid, which is better.
Which is
There are
well.
two words. There are two words that I avoid:
Uh-huh.
better and easier. And I avoid those words because they kind of set up unrealistic expectations. Better kind of leads you down this path of, okay, if I do these things, then somehow this real difficult challenge is going to change in a way that it's not going to be as difficult. So I kind of put that out of the way.
Okay.
And then easier,
Mhm.
well, this is a fundamentally difficult challenge. So it's just not realistic to think that something that's fundamentally difficult is ever going to be easy.
Okay.
So we put that out the way
Oh,
to
all right.
just embrace,
Mhm.
okay, it's hard. So what do we need to do to get through this challenge? What do we have to do? And so what my book does is it uses self-reflection to help people define who you were before this came. What do you have in you? And how are you going to use what you have and what you know about yourself and your loved one to get your past out of the way, get what you need to cope with what you're experiencing, and set your foundation for something effective moving forward. In that, you're also driven by, we also have our values. So going back to those emotions, it's like, what do we value? And so there are 4 values that I talk about,
Yeah.
which are honor, which is
Mhm.
the value you place on the relationship, trust, to know what you're going to get, being honest, which is facing what you're getting,
Okay.
and then respect, which is how you treat yourself and others. And that's all tied together with your self efficacy about, I believe I can do this. And so staying grounded into, yeah, I believe I can do this, and making sure that you get the support that helps you do it.
I just wish for caregivers to embrace those things that assist them to make their life a little bit better. I know you don't like that word, but a little bit, manageable.
Manageable.
Manageable, yes, yes. Um, because there was these articles that I've read as well that say some caregivers are given so many support but they don't make use of the support that are given. Like there's support out there. You have this book that can support them, but for them, they don't make use of that, and they end up burnt out. They end up depressed.
Well, so going back to that first life lesson, that the hardest part is doing what you've got to do while you're feeling what you're feeling. It's really hard. And something that we often feel, and as an African American woman, one of the things that we often feel is that you're not supposed to be selfish, and that taking care of yourself in this is selfish. And that's a no no. But life lesson number 2, you're an integral part of this care relationship. And that's why I use the teeter totter, because a teeter totter won't move with just one person on it. You are an integral part of making this care relationship move. So your needs have to be considered as well. And then that third life lesson, you can choose. We don't feel like we're supposed to choose. And I don't know what it's like to be a woman of African descent in the UK, but I know in the US, we're kind of conditioned to think that you get what you get and you're supposed to be happy with it. And you're supposed to tolerate it. You're just supposed to swallow that. But no, you can choose. You can choose how you want to live this. And it's very difficult for caregivers to include themselves, because there are those cultural norms that say, if you're supposed to be thinking about somebody else, you shouldn't be thinking about yourself. And I've learned on this that I've had to be selfish enough to be self-preserving, because if I fall apart, what's going to happen to her? If I'm supposed to be caring for her and I fall apart, she won't get care. So I have to care for me. And that's why I changed the phrase from caregiving to giving care. And why giving care is what you do for both of you.
I love that.
I just get really excited and passionate about this. It's like, no, you're here. You're in this.
Yes, we're in this thing together.
And so I liked the question that you asked me about that. Sometimes, as a researcher, sometimes researchers who haven't had the lived experience of caring for a loved one, they miss the nuances of caring for a loved one. It's sort of like a recipe. You know, have you ever gone to a friend's house and they made a dish and you really liked it and you said, "Oh, I want to take this home. Give me the recipe." And you said, and the person was, "Okay, sure." And they write down the recipe and you go home and you try it, and it's not bad, but it doesn't taste like her. So you go back and you ask your friend, "Well, I tried it, but," and then she tells you a little, what I call the little pinky secrets. How long did you caramelize the onions? Did you use a little bit more, or did you add a pinch more of this or a dash more of that? And you go, "Oh, well," when people are writing about family caregivers and they haven't had to put in the dash of this or a pinch of that, the research that comes out often misses those nuances.
Yes.
And a lot of researchers have strong quantitative backgrounds. And qualitative research is what's really going to get you in there and get that understanding of what this lived experience is.
You see why one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you is because you are a caregiver already. So you know what you're going to talk about. What you're going to discuss here is lived experience. I love lived experiences, by the way. They make much more sense than somebody who just read and said 1, 2, 3.
Exactly. And so one of my pet peeves is with people saying, "Well, you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to get some rest." Okay. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, if this person doesn't have the support networks in place, how is she going to go out and get some rest? How's she going to go out and have lunch with somebody if you don't have the support networks to sit with your mom? And my mom has Alzheimer's dementia. So I can identify with mothers of children with special needs, because this is a special need she has. Everybody can't just sit with her. And so understanding, okay, what does this person need in order to be able to have those 3 hours to go get hair and nails or a massage, and helping that person identify what you need for your person in order for you to be able to go out and do that. And those are the things that I talk about in the book.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And you talked about the person in your group who had siblings who live outside the UK.
Yeah.
That also brings in another dynamic, because each person in the family had a relationship with that loved one, and they could be very widely different. And so their engagement with you is going to be different because of the relationship they had with that person. And it can get really frustrating of like, this is your mom too. Where are you? This is your mom too. But if that person's not ready to embrace this dementia illness, you can't make them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that, and I say this in my book, you've got to ask for help where you're most likely to get it.
Oh, okay.
So trying to get your sister to do something she doesn't want to do, that's just going to expend your energy. And as family caregivers, we don't have extra.
No.
And you can fill in the blank of X, whatever the extra is, but we don't have extra. So if you've got to put in energy
Uh-huh.
to getting this support, really look for those places where you're going to get the support, as opposed to forcing people to try to get them to do, because again, there are these emotions that come in. This is your mom. You should be here too. And giving your self space to work through the fact that, okay, this person can't, for whatever their reasons are, they can't be here, and they have to own their own choices. I have to own my choices over here. And so my choice is I've got to ask for help where I can get it.
That, Dr. Sheri, is more like, an aha moment for me in terms of caregivers needing support. You just said something for me so profound, like don't waste your energy on people who are not going to reciprocate. I love that. I pray that whoever listens to this, they should take that as a caregiver. Just don't spend your energy where it's not going to be reciprocated. I love that. Okay, going forward, I read in your website, these are statistics that I've written here. It says there are 53 million caregivers. 61% of those are still in the workforce, and 70% of those experience work-related difficulties. So I think your company, your niche is to create solutions for working caregivers.
Yeah, and so let me just kind of back up a minute.
Yeah.
In this PhD space, they don't teach us about using these big giant brains that they make us grow as a business. So I'm learning this whole business side of this. And when I saw those statistics about, I'm not alone, there's so many of us out here. And initially it was kind of like, okay, this is a huge market. So trying to find them, and then it kind of clicked with me. It's like, well, if they're under 65, they're probably still in the workforce. And so my niche now is starting to shift towards building tools that companies can include in their benefits packages that fit in that general space of wellness. Because that's what my book is talking about. It's about dealing with your emotions so that you can be well. My mom broke her hip 3 years ago. So in this dementia journey, there are other illnesses and injuries that can happen. And so you're walking through those illnesses and injuries with a person who's losing their capacity to process what's happening. And at the time, my mom was 93 years old with Alzheimer's dementia. And I was dealing with a physical therapist who was just politely saying, but I'm not getting anywhere with her. She won't stand. She won't work through the pain. I'm like, and you really expected somebody 93 years old with Alzheimer's dementia to do that? Really?
Yeah.
So she reported it as she's not making satisfactory progress. And so the young ladies with the clipboards, with respect to monitoring her Medicare and all of that, she's really not making satisfactory progress. And it just finally hit this point of, you know what? give me my baby back and let me do what I know she can. Fine. You can't get her to do what I know she can do. Give her back. And so we got the home physical therapist to come in, and he had read the facility physical therapist notes. And I said, ignore that. When she's ready, I said, she was always very active. When she's ready, she's going to get up and go.
Yeah.
And I had noticed that whenever she had a regular walker, she kind of hunched forward. And I was like, no, that's not good body posture. So I bought a walker with armrests in it that helped her stand up straighter. And it took a while to get there. But then when we got it, the physical therapist had her walking, and she just kept going and going and going and going. And by the time they walked around and came back, and he just kind of had this look on his face like, I never expected that much. I was like, I told you from the very beginning, when she's ready, she will do it.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure we're running out of time here. I want to know now, how is mom? How is she? And then you talk about any question that maybe I have not asked you that you think will benefit our listeners. First, how is mom? How is she?
She's well.
Uh-huh.
She's 93 years old. She can still travel.
Yeah.
And in fact, I don't know if you noticed this, like sunlight behind me. We live in Chicago, but I'm actually in Florida.
Okay.
And I started bringing her to Florida because winters in Chicago were just too harsh. And I noticed that staying inside for 16, 17 weeks, her brain would start slowing down.
Yeah.
And she has a disease that's already making her brain slow down. So we'd have to work harder each year, each spring when we could get back up and out to kind of get her back where she was. But because of the disease, you couldn't get back to where you were. So it's like, well, we can't keep taking these little steps down.
Okay.
We have to put her in a space where she can function. I also started to notice that she couldn't walk in those heavy boots anymore. And the weight of shoes that she needs in order to be able to walk, you can't wear those in Chicago in the wintertime. So again, being in a space where she can function. And I don't have any scientific proof that it has helped, but anecdotally, yeah, it does create a plateau for her. She's not getting any better, but she's not getting any worse.
Hallelujah. Yes. All right. I love that. I love that feedback about your mom. So any other thing that you want to share with our listeners as we come to the end?
The most important
about your book and your company.
My book is available on Amazon. So you can just put in the title, OMG, I'm the Grown-Up, a conversation on giving care to a loved one and yourself. Put that in and it pops right up and you can get that. I've started my own little podcast, so you can hear my stories on my website, www.praxis, Praxis, forcare.com. And I do a weekly blog post that talks about just my life as a caregiver. What got on my nerves this week? What did I learn this week?
Yes.
Where am I this week?
Yes.
And at the end of my posts, I always give people a little tidbit to think about. I encourage them to think about where you are in your journey, because it's so hard for family caregivers to include themselves. And that is the key for making this very difficult life role manageable.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Dr. Sheri. We finally had that chat that had been pending for some time. But thank you very much for gracing our podcast.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Dementia care. How deep is your love?